Hi, this is Laura Holyoke, and I have part 2 of the political lens for you. So one of the things that I'm mainly going to talk about in part 2 is, since we're in the political lens, I'm going to talk about power. And Gareth Morgan has a list of what he considers the most important sources of power. So I'm going to spend most of my time on this. So one source of power that most of us know about is formal authority, so a form of legitimized power associated with the position that one holds. Second source of power is control of scarce resources. That scarcity and dependence are the keys to resource power. And we've talked a little bit about having to have slack resources in order to innovate. Scarce resources is a recognition of a minimum of what we can live on, is usually what we're making. And it's much easier for us, hypothetically, to adjust upward when we're making more money, and can potentially reduce conflict when we're fighting over the same scarce resources. Without slack resources, hard to obtain innovation. And if you take the idea of incremental resources, that is, increase slack becomes a necessary part once it is allocated and built into the budget from one year to the next. So what happens then when situations, a department maybe is given extra money incrementally, and then people forget that that money was actually slack resources because we tend to depend on it. So number 3 is use of organizational structure, rules, and regulations. And this is the idea that some people, in order to obtain power in organizations, know the rules and regulations to a T. Sometimes this feels a little bit punitive if you're trying to get maybe reimbursed for something, or trying to get signatures or permission to do something. Control of decision processes. When you think about the number of decisions that are made in organizations on a daily basis, and even the bigger decisions, who controls the decisions and who controls the processes? So it's the ability to influence the outcomes of decision making. That is, that you can control the decision premises, under what conditions, that is, to frame a decision or define the constraints of the decision, the processes, how and by who gets to make the decisions, and who considers alternatives, and then the decision issues and objectives. So this is information about what alternatives, the evaluative criteria to be employed, and these individuals have more power because they choose what to report or what information to give in order to make decisions. Lots of power there. Control of knowledge and information. I think this goes hand in hand with the idea that if our computers go down or we have trouble with technology, we are almost we're brought to our knees, that we need the technology person to come and help us. And that usually goes along with the knowledge and information of having to do something. If you can't get access to it, you're in trouble. Control of boundaries. This is the idea that administrative assistants can control who gets to talk to the boss and who doesn't. So it's the interface between elements of an organization. Roles such as the secretary, admin assistant, special assistant, or project coordinator often are able to acquire power that goes well beyond their formal status. These are also individuals that have quite a bit of power because who they answer to, those people, their supervisors or bosses, often have, these admin assistants have this person's ear. So how you treat the front desk person does really matter. They control the boundaries. The ability to cope with uncertainty gives people power. When individuals are not comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen or not knowing what's going to come ahead, some individuals just are not able to handle that. So the more ability that you have to cope with uncertainty, the more power you have. And then control of technology. I think I said this one a little different in terms of the knowledge and information a couple slides ago, but we become vitally dependent on the core technology and converting the inputs into outputs as well. So how we convert those inputs into outputs really does make sense. Really does, I'm talking, really does have a lot of power associated with it. We get power from interpersonal alliances, networks that we belong to, and control of the informal organization. This is the idea of having power without authority. It's the idea that we have friends in high places. It's not what you know, but who you know. These may be sponsors, mentors, affiliations that you have, coalitions of people prepared to trade support and favors to further their individual ends. So we tend to have these sort of connections here and there. And also to remember that we are always working with other individuals who have these sort of alliances and networks. Control of counter organizations, that is trade unions and people that have power in a different direction. And then symbolism and the management of meaning. So this is the idea that one's ability to persuade others to endorse and perform realities that further the interest one wishes to pursue. So when an individual really starts promoting some kind of idea and saying that in order to do so, that this is going to create a certain meaning, check your sources. Gender and the management of gender relations. So in some organizations, it just makes a great deal of difference if you are a man or a woman, based on how that organization is run, based on the structure of that organization, and that many organizations are dominated by gender-related values that bias organizational life in favor of one sex or another. It's the expectations that we have. So I think I have a list of you of female strategies for use of power and also male strategies use of power. And I think you may be able to see some of these in your workplace. You may be able to see some of these in The Devil Wears Prada. So the idea that maybe some females in leadership positions take on a Queen Elizabeth role. That is, they rule with a firm hand, surrounding oneself as far as possible by submissive men. Margaret Thatcher provides a modern example. Well, not quite so modern anymore. Down to the invisible woman who adopts a low profile and tries and blends with one's surroundings, exercising influence in whatever ways one can. The great mother consolidates power through caring and nurturing. So just, when you want to play around, I think this is a fun list. And the list for males is even longer. So male strategies for gaining power. One is the father, which is used to win the support of younger women searching for a mentor. Maybe the playboy, who uses sex appeal, both real and imagined, to win support and favor from female colleagues. The little boy, often used to get one's way in difficult situations, especially in relation to female co-workers and subordinates. Their role may take many forms. For example, the angry little boy who throws a temper tantrum to create stir and force action, the frustrated little whining boy, so on and on. I think you can have some fun with these. So structural factors that define this stage of actions. And here's what the crazy thing is about power, is that hardly anyone in an organization admits to having any real power. Given the numerous and varied sources of power people in organizations, that we all tend to feel a little bit powerless. So how is it that there can be so many sources of power, yet so much feeling of powerlessness? Just to stop and ask yourself. Back to the sources of power from Gareth Morgan. The power that one already has, power is a route to power, and one can often use power to acquire more power. And I just thought this picture was cute. Power of irreplaceability. So we have increased power if we cannot be readily replaced. So power is increased when a monopoly of information is held. In order to keep people from being brought in with the same skills, expertise from a consultant not shared with other departments as well. So this is a lot of holding close. The power of consensus, when we bring in our friends and all agree on something. And then the power of political skill. So this is legitimate power. Again, one's position is part of this, but also where in the hierarchy that we are involved with other activities. These are personal characteristics. Really is a lot of political skill. So that's referent power. And then how good one is in the role. That this is credibility that individuals build over time, verbal skills or the ability to articulate very well what's going on, being able to diagnose power plays, who has it, and understanding the rules of the game, and then just individual power. So another person who studied power is Gert Hofstede, and he looked at one of his elements in looking at cultures was he identified high power distance cultures where there are a small, powerful elite, and the majority are relatively powerless. The elite are often very segregated, and in these sort of cultures, people tend not to question who is in power, and education is not available to all, as well as it's very difficult to move up into a power position. Where on the other hand, we have low distance power cultures, and this is the idea that people should be able to move up into a very high level of power and start out at the very lowest level. Okay, so this is just another information that the idea that politics is in the eye of the beholder. So if a political label may be blaming others, then effective management may call it fixing responsibility. Apple polishing becomes demonstrating loyalty. Covering your rear becomes documenting decisions. Whistleblowing becomes improving efficiency. Ambitious becomes career-minded. So pay attention to detail and how we label things. So I think this quote is pretty telling, from Peter Block. The power of a boss is asymmetrical. It is easier to use authority to tighten up, shrink, and make an organization more cautious than it is to use power to open up, expand, and make an organization more courageous. There is a readiness of people in low power positions to believe the worst. If it is fear we want to instill in our subordinates, they are quite ready to respond. If, on the other hand, we want them to take more responsibility and to be political in a positive way, that is so difficult it is worth writing a book about. So share power. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening to this part 2 of The Political Lens.